That was interesting. Can you all see my screen? Great. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee meeting. It is Thursday, May 18th. Just a little bit about our webinar logistics. This presentation is being recorded. It's going to be posted to the county's solid waste and recycling webpage within about 1 week's time. Our agenda this evening does hold time for public comments. There's 2 specific spots on the agenda for that. Additionally, this evening, we are offering translation and interpretation services. Panelists and attendees need to actively select at the bottom of your screen between the Spanish or the English room. And just some best practices. Please speak clearly and in a normal tone. 1 person should speak at a time. And you could use the raise the hand feature if you need to ask any clarifying questions. Some of our committee bylaws on public comment. Only the committee chair may recognize a public attendee. You could use the raise the hand feature, or if you've called in, we can unmute and give you an opportunity to weigh in. As I stated, there's 2 designated times on the agenda, and only the chair may acknowledge a community member when it's time to speak. And with that, I will stop sharing here and move over to doing a roll call. Okay, let's start with our chair, Ashvin.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So we do have 2 new committee members today, Brian and Kristen. So, please use this time to introduce yourselves and give us some background to 2 new members. And then also existing members, please, give a little bit of an introduction just so that everybody is familiar. I am your chair. I've been chair for about a year now, and I've been on the committee for 4 years. I live in unincorporated Washington County. And maybe just a brief background about myself. We always learn a little bit about something every time we do these introductions. I have a PhD in material science and chemistry, and I currently work at Intel as a capital planner and equipment efficiency engineer. And I'd say the reason I'm on this committee is I'm, always thought it was interesting how much impact these committees have on local changes, and I think this meeting is a good example of that, right? As a volunteer committee, we do have a very important role today in terms of accrediting these changes and results. But I'm also a huge enthusiast for recycling and compost, so I always enjoy these meetings. So
great. Next, we will move on to Sandra, and she is our vice chair.
Hi, I'm Sandra Smith, unincorporated Washington County resident, and vice chairman of the Garbage and Recycling Committee. I've been on the committee 5 years, and I just got reappointed for another, is it 4, I guess, another term. Yay. Geez, how to follow Ashvin here. I work for a large financial institution. I am a master recycler. I've been involved with recycling since college. I was on a recycling team in college, and it's kind of carried over through my years. What else to say? But
Okay, well, thank you. We'll move on for Leslie.
Hi there, I'm Leslie. I have been on the GRAC for I think almost a year now. It's really flown by. A public member. I live in unincorporated Washington County. You may hear the waves in the background. I will often call in from weird places. I travel for work a lot, but this time I'm on my very belated honeymoon, which was canceled because of COVID. So hello from Maui, aloha. Yeah. So if you need any beach vistas, it's cloudy, but yeah, but that is, sorry, Kathy, that is why I did not respond to your email, but it is a good reason. And yeah, I work in pet care, the pet care industry, and I do like science communications for a large pet care company. But recycling is like in my blood as a native Northwesterner. So I think we were taught, like growing up in the 90s, like there was very big recycling times in Oregon. So everyone was taught to, you know, rinse out all of the things before you throw out the recycling bin. So it's my first like government committee. It's really a fun committee to be on. And I look forward to our next in-person landfill tour, which I like to tell stories about all the time.
Great, thanks, Leslie. Now on to our first new member.
Leslie is also very dedicated.
Yeah, congrats on
My
that belated
dedication knows
honeymoon.
it knows no bounds. I'm like, hold on, we need to stop doing honeymoon things, and I have a GRAC meeting. Yeah, so my beach nap it's a little belated today, but you know, I like that. You're right, Tom. It is dedication.
Thanks, Leslie. We're going to move on to our first new member to introduce this evening, and that would be Christy.
Hi, my name's Christy Dykink. It's like D-I-K-I-N-K to make it simpler than all those letters look like. Also an unincorporated Washington County and brand new here to this committee. I started with recycling. I started a paper recycling nonprofit in Baker City in 1971. So I've been interested in this for a very long time. And my career was high school teaching in US history and social studies in general, economics in particular, which had some valuable insights. And then I think with the situation with the environment and climate and such, I felt like I needed to do something. So I enrolled in the Master Recycler class, which I love. It was wonderful. And the main message I got out of that was that we have to reduce and then reuse and then recycle, that we can't recycle our way out of this. And so I'm really glad to see that there is an element of reduce and reuse in the mission of this committee. And I'm very happy to be here. I've been retired for a while now and very happily so, taught in Hillsborough. So thank you.
Great. Well, welcome. And I'm going to pass it over to Tom next.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Tom Eggleston. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I am the Solid Waste and Recycling Division Manager here at Washington County. In that role, I support the team that works on the regulatory side of things, where we see most interaction with this committee, education and outreach, and then we also do a code enforcement function. I do sit on this committee as a member. However, I don't hold a vote. So I fully participate in conversation and can have full discussions with the committee, and then don't need to wait to be called upon, I guess, by the chair. I guess I kind of do, but so that's my role. I'm here as a subject matter expert, a representative of the county, of the Health and Human Services Department, and I'm excited to support this group, and I'm really proud of where things have gone and where we are today. So I look forward to more work ahead with this awesome group of people. Thanks, Erin.
Great. Next, we'll move it over to Myra.
Sí. Hola, buenas tardes. Sí, mi nombre es Mayra Hernández. Uso los pronombres ella. He estado en ese comité por un año, ya casi para 2 años, creo. Y bueno, soy un miembro de la comunidad en el área de condado de Washington. Y estuve en el 2019, me certifiqué como un experto en reciclaje. Entonces estoy básicamente trayendo a la comunidad de aquí, así como lo estoy conociendo a base de la experiencia de interactuar con la comunidad, hablando de reciclaje, hablando de los desperdicios de comida, todo lo que involucra el utilizar los materiales correctamente, vayan directamente a donde tienen que estar, ¿verdad? En el contenedor correcto. Entonces, estoy aquí como parte de la voz de la comunidad.
Great. Thank you. Next up, we have Vinod.
Hi, Christy and Brian. Good to have you aboard. My name is Vinod Singh. I work at Far West Recycling. I'm the industry representative on this group. We have 2 facilities in Washington County. We have a metals and electronics recycling in Tualatin, and then we have a material recovery facility. There's paper, plastic, glass, plus metals, and all kinds of different things in Hillsborough. I've been with the company about 30 years, but I started recycling, doing paper drives as a Boy Scout. I grew up in this area, so that was my first introduction to the company, and probably a lot longer than 30 years later, I'm still here. So I enjoy getting everybody's perspective and sharing what I can with people. So nice to meet you.
Great. And next up, we have our second new member of the evening, Brian.
Hello, everyone. Glad to meet you all, at least virtually. Hopefully to meet you guys in person in the near future. I've been on the committee like 2 days right now at this point. I do live in unincorporated Washington County, probably as far east as you can get before you hit another county. So what I do for a living, I'm a senior managing director for anti-fraud for a company called Pindrop. Basically, I've been an anti-fraud professional for about 25 years. Worked at like Bank of America, American Express, things like that, stopping bad guys. And now I'm with this company, Pindrop. So it's a real passion of mine. So if you guys ever need help with a fraud problem, I'm more than happy to talk fraud anytime with any of you guys. The reason I'm here is I really got aware of how much plastic film is out there in the universe about a year ago and got real passionate about it. Many of you probably have received emails that work for Washington County from me. And when an opportunity came open, I'm like, you know what? It's one thing to be just a person from the community. Let's see if I can maybe offer some insights on this committee. And I was very honored to be selected. So I look forward to working with all of you guys and hopefully, you know, making everything better for all of us.
Great. Well, that is all of our committee members for this evening. Do you want us to do other introductions now, Ashvin?
Yeah, could we go ahead and introduce the consultants also from Marina?
Yep.
Let's have staff do the county staff do a robuster introduction too. Not that Tanya and Craig can't do a robuster introduction. They don't have to, though.
Yeah. Did we hit Kathy also?
You want me to go first? Okay. So, hi, I'm Kathy Folsom. I've been with the county a long time, like 17 years, all with solid waste and recycling in one role or another. For the last few years, part of my responsibilities is hopefully managing the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee, setting agendas, making sure that everyone's comfortable and taking ideas and doing all those fun things. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and learned a lot. And yes, sometimes that includes bugging people if they're going to be here tonight or not, but everyone always answers, so that's nice. The first time I remember dealing with any kind of recycling, this is going to be my age, but we did newspaper drives and glass collection. And that was back in the day that when you collected glass, you got to, the older kids got to break it. And I was always one of the ones, because my dad drove and he would let us break the glass. So, and here I am today, like decades later.
Thanks, Kathy. So this evening we have with us 2 interpreters, and then we also have Ricardo Palazuelos. He is a solid waste and recycling staff member. He does the Spanish recording for us. I don't know if he's available to pop on or not to do a self-introduction.
What about you, Aaron?
But I can go on. Yeah. So Aaron Stein, I'm the operations supervisor for solid waste and recycling. I have been with the county a little over 3 years. I've been in the environmental field for just about 10 now, kind of hard to believe. And my first introduction to recycling was my stepfather was a Pepsi delivery man. And back in the 80s and 90s, when things expired, you didn't really have a recall system, so we would bust all the cans in our driveway or dump them down the drain, and then we would take them in for metal recycling. So many days popping pop cans to take them to the metal recycler to get some of our summer spending money when I was a kid. So with that, I'm going to go on. And one of my key functions is I maintain the rate process for the solid waste and recycling division. And I do that in conjunction with our contracted CPA firm, Marina and Company. And I have Tanya Moffett and Craig Pop here with us this evening, and I'll let them both do a quick introduction as well.
I'm Tanya Moffett, and I'm the managing partner at Marina and Company. And we are a CPA firm that does a lot of consulting with municipalities. And so one of those functions that we do is we work very heavily in the solid waste industry. And I've been working in this industry for over 20 years and working with the county since Kathy started. So it's been a little while. I was going to say 18 years, Kathy. So, and my first experience working with or being around recycling is our community. I'm from White Salmon, Washington, so up the Columbia Gorge. We would do a large community cleanup every year. And so as a high school student, we would go out and make sure that everybody knew, which meant taking flyers door to door, and then helping with the recycling. That we also had like a reuse program where people could bring their stuff and then people could basically come and take the stuff as well. So I was heavily involved with that, and my grandfather was the one who started it in our community. So I've been involved with that for many years.
Coach Pope, I'm a manager with Marina and Company. I think this might be my 5th year working with the county and helping with the rate review. And as part of the rate review, take the DCRs, take that input or that information, that data coming from the haulers, input it into some of our work papers, do some analytics and looking at comparisons and kind of looking at some of the hauler information. And then that's where we create adjustments. And then we kind of package that all together into a composite and give it back to the county for the rate review to adjust. So, yeah.
Great. I think that is everyone.
Well, awesome. Great to have a group of people who are all passionate about something, volunteering their time and proving their dedication. So thank you, everybody. You can go ahead, Tom, if you want to go into the crack communications and updates.
Yeah, I'll try to make this quick. I do want to try to give a quick legislative update because I know those was interesting for folks I've heard. On Recycle Plus update, Kathy sent out an email earlier this week, I believe, that included a link to the 4/25, so the April 25th work session with the Board of Commissioners, where we provided them, I'm sorry, talking fast, Victor, provided them with a update on Recycle Plus. So if there's information you want to, if you review that, or if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. It was a pretty robust update there. Just a quick note that we are still currently in the process of recruiting a new education and outreach supervisor. Megan Schuler, who was on our team previously, has moved to a different role in the county. And so we do have that position out for recruitment. The posting has closed and we're doing first round interviews starting next week. So maybe at our next, not the next meeting, but the meeting after that, hopefully we'll have a new supervisor that we can bring to the committee for y'all to meet for the education work group. And then let me go through the legislative update. A couple bills of note that I want to kind of talk about. There was one bill, Senate Bill 859, that was floated a couple months ago in the session, and it related to adding fees to garbage and recycling rates to pay for homeless encampment cleanups, which was immediately a controversial bill when it went out the gate. In regards to how funds would be allocated and collected for that type of activity and who would be collecting those funds and doing what with them. So that one did go down and it is considered dead. So it's not a bill out anymore. There was a effort from the League of Oregon Cities and City of Portland and the county joined to oppose that before it really got anywhere in committee. There's a bill related to electronics recycling, House Bill 3220, which is essentially modernizing Oregon e-cycles. This is a bill that DEQ has as their priority bill this year. It's intended to fix some challenges with the Oregon e-cycles program that resulted in losing some collection points because the program overperformed. And so there was an inherent flaw in the bill where overperformance meant scaling back on opportunities to recycle. Far West Recycling in Hillsborough here was one of those sites that was actually removed from the program. So it did directly impact our community in Washington County when they were scaling back those collection points. So House Bill 3220 is intended to fix that. It creates a more modern extended producer responsibility program and would potentially essentially fix those kinds of issues. It did pass out of the House on 3/22, and it passed out of the Senate Energy and Environment Committee on 5/9, so just 9 days ago, and it is hung up on the Senate floor with the walkout right now. So there's a lot of backlog of bills that are waiting, and it's waiting on the floor. It's fully supported by a coalition of stakeholders, including industry and the electronics industry, the hauling industry, local governments. So if it is when the backlog opens up, I expect it to go through. I'm sure some people are sweating on it. Go ahead, Brian.
So just real quick, if it doesn't get a hearing and the session ends, does it restart the whole process, the bill?
Yep.
Okay.
I think it's cooked enough that if it didn't get through this year, the DEQ would just reintroduce it in the short session, and it would likely stand a really good chance because, like I said, it's got a pretty strong coalition, a lot of agreement behind it. Senate Bill 123 is a labeling bill regarding recyclability claims on labels. This bill is focuses on digital labeling, and it directs producer responsibility organizations that will start forming as a result of the Recycling Modernization Act in the next couple of years to conduct a feasibility study and make recommendations no later than December 31st, 2027 on using digital labels for recyclability of products. That was a part of an element of Truth in Labeling Task Force recommendation, and that one has gone through. Passed out of the Senate on the April 11th, passed out of the House on May 9th, and it's going to the governor. I don't think she signed it yet. Senate Bill 542 is a right to repair bill. Would give require electronic equipment manufacturers to make available schematics and parts and tools to repair their devices. This is a priority bill for us at Washington County in the support category. The Association of Oregon Recyclers is supporting this bill pretty heavily, along with a coalition of folks in the environmental industry. It went to the Senate floor on the 24th of April, and it was referred to the Rules Committee in the Senate off the floor. So it's kind of hung up in the Rules Committee, and there's a lot of work to try to unhang it up in that committee. I'm not sure how the impact of the walkout is doing committee work, but there's some hope underway, still some hope out there that this bill could go somewhere, but this is the third time it's been in the legislature, and I think this is the farthest it's gotten so far. So there's still some folks really pushing hard to get it out of the committee and onto the floor of the Senate, at least. Senate Bill 543 is a bill that prohibits food vendors from using styrofoam containers for takeout or food, putting food in styrofoam containers. And that bill actually passed out of the Senate on the 3rd of April. It passed out of the House on the 26th of April, and the governor signed it 10 days ago on the 8th. So that will become law on January 1st, 2024. So it's a polystyrene ban for food service ware. Senate Bill 544 relates to directing the DEQ to establish waste reduction targets for single-use plastic, foodware and single-use plastic packaging. That bill was hung up in the Senate Energy and Environment Committee and never made its way out. I think it's past the deadlines, so nothing's come out of that one. And then finally, the last one I'll talk about is Senate Bill 545, which relates to reuse of containers. And this bill directed the state Department of Agriculture and the Oregon Health Authority to adopt rules that would allow consumers to use their own reusable containers at restaurants and grocery stores. There was some hiccup during the pandemic with that, and that did pass out of the Senate back in March and passed out of the House on April 26th, and the governor signed that with the polystyrene ban on the 8th, so that will become law as well. And that one is actually declaring emergency. It becomes effective immediately, and it's a direction, provides direction to the OHA and the ODA to start to do their rulemaking, which I understand is already underway. So happy to answer any questions that if I can about those bills, and that's the ones we're following and where we're at. And that's, I think, going to stop there with my updates, Ashvin, so we can jump into the topics. Go ahead, Chrissy.
And just a quick question. Is there anyone in particular who needs to hear from us on the right to repair bill?
I can find out.
Well, I can probably do that too. I was just curious. I don't know how involved you get with the specifics of who's for it and who's against, but that sounds like one that could use some support.
Let me check in with my our team of government affairs team and see if they think there's anything that we could help with. I think that's a good question for us at the county as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Tom. Kathy, do you want to go over calendar updates, please?
Thanks, Ashvin. I'll be quick. There's not a lot on our calendar right now. Next meeting in June, because we're meeting a week later in May, it's only 3 weeks. We're gonna have 3 of our collection service providers, Pride, Waste Management, and Garbarino Disposal, come and talk about those additional fees for residential service. You know, how they're assessed, what happens if someone complains, how many they collect, that kind of thing. And then the other item on the agenda, I hope, is that some folks from Metro are going to come and talk about their system facilities plan. They have a project team that's been gathering information regarding the existing system, things like, facility locations or projected population growth, elements like that, so that they can determine where there's gaps in and develop possible solutions to identify in the future fix those gaps. And so from that perspective, I think it kind of piggybacks on some of the discussion we've had over the last several months about disposal sites and other sorts of facilities that exist across the region. For July and August, typically we take a month off, one of those months off, just because lots of people are on vacation and we don't often have an action item that falls in the summertime. If we don't have a presentation, one of the things we could do is along the lines of tours, we could think about, maybe setting up something with OBRC. If you remember when he came and gave his presentation, he said he'd be happy to have the GRAC members come and take a tour of the actual facility and see up close all the new innovations that are going on. The other thing is, if any of you have an idea about something that you would like us to come to the committee with, whether it's a presentation or a discussion, just reach out to me. That's partly how we got the additional fees, like the Smiley Can discussion on the agenda, is Ashvin reached out. So I would encourage any of the rest of you, if you have something you'd like to hear about. And then we'll probably definitely take one of the months off unless there's something that comes up. And then in the fall, we have items that are gonna pop up again, so that's about all I have.
Sounds good, Kathy. Thanks for lining up those presentations. And yeah, definitely just echo that call for action. Please reach out to Kathy with topics. It's a good opportunity for us to learn about stuff. You know, Sandra also brought up the OBRC, which was a really great presentation. We learned a lot. So, you know, especially new members, what you want to hear, I think we would all like to learn a lot more about this, you know, solid waste. So next item is oral communication. So this is the first opportunity for any public commentary. We can pause for a little bit to see if anyone from the public attendee pool is interested in making a comment.
Ashwin, I do see one hand. Give me just
Yeah.
one moment.
I think I just unmuted myself. Did I?
Hello. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna let you know. You can go ahead. I was able to give you permission to
Okay.
speak.
All right. Hi, my name is Kate Small and I'm in unincorporated Washington County, and I just have a question. And I want to know why we can't get a yard debris container. I've been around to a bunch of my neighbors, and I would say at least half of them want yard debris, but it's like when I call and ask for one, they say, well, you're in an area where you're supposed to burn. And it's like, we don't want to burn. There's a lot of us that don't want to burn our yard debris. And so we get a big garbage can and we put it in our garbage can. But we found out that it's a lot cheaper. You know, it's not as expensive to have yard debris, and then we could go to a smaller garbage can.
Kate, could we share an email address with you and you can give us some more information so we can look into it?
Sure, that would be great. I put on this Zoom when I came on, but I could give it to you now. I mean, I don't know, can you see it?
No, I cannot.
Okay. So,
Yeah, let me. If I could put it in the Q&A, I don't know how.
okay,
So how about I'm gonna give you an email address, recycle
oh, okay. Just a minute.
at, sorry,
Okay,
you ready?
yeah,
Recycle at Washington County, spelled out,
okay,
OR.gov.
now I go there and then I just ask the question again.
If you just send an email there and say, hi, this is Kate, I gave, provided testimony at the GRAC meeting. Can someone please reach out to me to talk about yard debris? Something along those lines. We'll have someone reach out to you.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like no other requests to
other
speak at
hands.
this point.
No.
Okay, so we can move on to the first action item, garbage and recycling rate review. Erin, do you want to take us away?
I will. I'm going to share my screen. So give me just a second to get situated. All right. Well, good evening. I have already done an introduction, so I'm going to skip that formality, but I am Erin Stein, and I am here to present the 2023 annual rate review findings. And then also we're including a little bit of information on staff's proposal for the urban residential food scrap collection program. Oh, and it's moving fast on me. So just a little background on the rate review. It is conducted each spring. The goal of conducting this annual analysis is to ensure community members are charged fair, reasonable, and just rates for essential collection services. The in-depth review of financial and programmatic data is supplied by the garbage and recycling collection companies, and it provides the county an opportunity to ensure each company is meeting the requirements of their franchise certificate. The process is facilitated by staff and our contracted CPA firm, which is Marina and Company. Marina and Company looks for anomalies in the reported information, makes recommendations of adjustments to better align reports with the company's supporting documentation, and also can assess year-over-year differences in industry trends. Staff then reports that finding each May to GRAC, and we take forth, we actually come here to report our findings, and then if needed, if staff has a recommendation for rate changes, presents that to GRAC, which then upon your recommendation, will move that forward to the board in the month of June for final approval. So all of our certificated collection companies are required to participate in this process. The companies that make up the top 75% of the system's revenue are subject to site visits. These are conducted either in person or virtually. And then all certificate holders are subject to a closer look if anomalies are found during the review process, either by staff or the CPAs. So what gives the county authority to set rates? Title 8.04, sections 3.20, 330, and 340 discuss rate provisions in detail. However, it is section 330 that gives the board the authority to institute rate changes. Pursuant to Washington County Code 8.04.03A, the annual rate review process ensures that any garbage and recycling collection rate changes, increases or decreases are just, fair, reasonable, and sufficient to provide proper service to the public, while also allowing for a reasonable return for our certificate holders. So the county operates on a return on revenue methodology. This is a standard approach for establishing an appropriate profit margin in the regulated solid waste collection systems, as there aren't typically significant capital expenditures or investments. If the prior year's system-wide return on revenue is more or less than the target ROR, currently at 10%, then the financial performance of each line of business, residential, commercial, and Dropbox, is then further evaluated to determine the areas of under or over financial performance. The goal is to set uniform collection rates, which provide revenues that cover allowable collection costs, plus a profit margin for the certificated collection companies. There are variations in rates between rural and urban areas, as well as service offerings, which account for additional transportation costs and other factors. So here on the screen is the equation that we utilize for calculating that return on revenue. So I'm going to present the results from the 2022 financials. Overall, the system performed, earning just over $41 million. The actual profit from last year was around $2.6 million, and that equals a 6.35 return on revenue, so below our 10% benchmark. When we look at each individual line of service, we look at residential, So residential applies to actually all can cart. So this could be commercial customers as well that have can cart services. So basically anything 90 gallons or less. And then our commercial line applies to containerized service. So if you think about this as containers of 1 yard or larger. And then we have our drop box and compactor. This is like for occasional use or maybe ongoing service at a business. These charges are typically for a 10-yard container or larger, and it's billed each time the container is hauled. So what does this mean? When we look at last year's results, the system netted $39 million. The income in 2021 was 4.9 million, and the return on revenue last year was 12.61. So we've had a downswing year over year. So what are some of the factors that accounted for this decrease in profit and revenue? We have some direct costs that increase. Disposal costs are significantly up. Recycling processing costs are also up. That's just to name a few. And then we also have to look at our indirect costs. So things like salary, training, and corporate overhead. So one of the key things, and the reason we do this process annually, is to bring balance to the system. And our underperformance was just around $1.7 million on the aggregate. And when we look at that by line of service, we estimate what dollar value needs to be collected in the system to raise each line back up to a 10% operating return on revenue. So for residential, we need to bring in an additional $1 million, and that's going to require a 3.6% rate increase. And what that means to the average customer, a 32-gallon can cart is really our base model when we're looking at residential services. It's a 96 cents per month rate increase. For commercial, we need to bring in about an additional 250,000. The target ROR would be an increase of 3.19% to get to the 10%. That means an increase of $8.41 per month for a 4-yard commercial customer. And for drop box and compactor, we're looking at needing an additional 414,000. That's going to require a 7.6% increase. That means on a 10-yard box haul, you're looking at an increase of $12.82 with each haul. I'm not going to get into the year-over-year comparisons. I do have that data if we want to look at it. But last year we had, because we'd overperformed, there was actually rate decreases recommended across the board. And then we, in lieu of a residential increase, we implemented a reduced rate program. So as you're sitting here trying to decide what factors would influence our desire to raise our customers' rates, we have to look at a variety of factors. We need to look at where our customers are concentrated, the methods of collection and transportation, how our disposal and processing costs are playing out, what's the local wage scale, what lines of services are we managing and maintaining for our customers, is there a reasonable return on revenue for the collection companies who provide these essential services, and are there any programmatic changes that we need to account for? And on that last note, we are recommending, staff is recommending a programmatic change, which is the introduction of the residential food scraps into our bi-weekly yard debris bins for urban residential customers. So anytime we are looking at a new program, such as the reduced rate program, which we launched last year, we do employ our accountants to do some analysis. And this year, Marina built a model for us. I'm just going to do kind of a high level recap of what that model entailed. the whole goal was to estimate what is the cost of adding this additional program going to look like when we introduce it to the system. So we actually have around 67,000 customers in urban unincorporated, and currently 58,000 of those have yard debris service. They are currently setting out about 20,600 tons per year of yard debris. We estimate that 20% of our residential garbage is actually food waste. And if each residential customer sets out about 1,400 pounds of garbage a year, about 383 pounds of that waste is food. So we really wanted to model, if we have X participation rate, how much is it going to cost the system to shift that material out of the garbage and into our yard debris system. So we came up with a series of benchmarks. We estimated that a participation rate of about 15% was a good starting point. Staff estimate that about 10,000 tons of material will actually shift from the wet waste into the new compostable waste stream. And the primary cost increase for program implementation are associated with labor, truck hours, and some additional material processing cost. It is worth noting that processing compostable materials, the actual processing cost is about half of what wet waste is. So there is some savings there, but with increased frequency, we had to account for that in our model. So the results of that model had staff landing at needing right around $482,000 would be needed in the system to get the urban area up to a 10% return on revenue. What that actually equates to the everyday customer, we would be requesting an additional 1.93% increase, so a total rate increase in the urban residential areas of 5.53% versus what the rural and the commercial customers would, can cart customers would see at 3.6%. And that does equal about $1.44 a month for the 32-gallon can cart customer. So our final recommendations this evening were shown in attachment A. I have in the GRAC packet, we have you all review those rates, and then those rate sheets actually carry on to the board if the recommendation is staff recommendation is carried forward here this evening. We are looking to increase rates for commercial drop box and residential customers. We are looking at no changes in rates for medical or the Recycle Plus lines of service. As far as commercial rates, we are recommending a 3.6% increase for drop box and compactor. We're recommending a 7.66% increase. For the rural residential, a 3.6% increase. And for urban residential, a 5.53% increase. And I think I have a typo on my commercial container. I'm going to have to refer to the staff report. Let me do that really quick. Because yes.
It's 3.19 if you.
Thank you. I know as soon as I saw it, I had a typo. So my apologies. For commercial, we are recommending the 3.19 as I stated on my earlier slide. Sorry about that. So tonight we're happy to answer any questions you have. This is super condensed version of our findings. Staff is here as well as Tanya and Craig. So we're happy to dive into any details. And then in the end, we'd be looking for GRAC's formal recommendation to carry forward to the board in the month of June.
Thanks, Aaron. You did a good job of explaining that. But I've also heard rates a couple of years now, so I finally feel slightly comfortable with it. We just generally open the floor for questions from the committee. You know, if we want to do some directed discussion, maybe focus on like just clarification on the process and how it was set up. If you have questions about that first, just to make sure that everyone's comfortable with how the calculations were done and the general process that we arrive for collections. You know, but then we also need to discuss the food waste, you know, additional on that. So just maybe try and separate that in your minds just so that we can have that discussion, but no hard barriers on questions, just recommending that. So any questions around how the rates are set or any of the numbers of the model around just general rates? Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Okay. I got a few questions. So you talked about direct versus indirect cost. I'm trying to understand the headwinds that the collection companies are facing. How much, just percentage-wise, if anyone can speak to it, was direct cost, which you stated were disposal, recycling, versus indirect, which is like salary, training, corporate overhead?
Yeah, I have some just basic statistics. They're broken down a little bit further, but what we did see as far as the direct cost was an increase of 12.3%. And that was right around $3.6 million in additional expenses. So just to highlight again, those are items like fuel, disposal costs for solid waste, recycling processing fees. We also have wages for route drivers in there, vehicle repairs and maintenance, and some depreciation cost on equipment.
That's
so then
direct. Sorry to interrupt. I just, because you said
Yes.
salary was indirect and that you said wages. That sounds the same to me.
Yeah, so that's the direct cost because they allocate cost from the routes they run in unincorporated to our area. So we get the total company and then they allocate their cost when they run routes in unincorporated. So our
And that
indirect,
That's driver wages. So management
Yes.
wages would be an indirect. Driver
Yes.
wages are direct.
so on the indirect side, we have things like management salaries, payroll expenses. We have corporate overhead costs, so that could be office space, training and worker safety expenses. Other things, I guess, general administrative costs that can't be directly associated to our line of service are more of a shared cost. So it could be a call center if they have one, allocating that portion of the cost to the system.
Aaron, and the increase on indirects,
Sorry, 7.2%, so around 410,000. So definitely the direct operating cost outweighed the indirect as far as the percent increase last year.
I'll pause and wait and let Leslie wait.
Yeah, I just I feel like Aaron, you or Tom, like one of you have probably explained this before. Why is the threshold or whatever the term for it, why is it 10% for that, like we have to stick at? Like what makes that like the magic number? And is that something we like share with customers? I'm trying to think about, like, we had a rate decrease last year, which was really exciting, but then we have a rate increase this year, and I'm like, I don't want there to be a sort of like a blowback to it, but there's like very logical reasons for why these things are happening. So I'm just wondering why the 10%, and sort of like, how do you describe to people, or do you like why that is?
So we do just, we have a very extensive FAQ up on our website just to build transparency around the process and the system. The why to the 10%, that happened before I came on board, but it's been 8 or 10 years that this fixed target has been at 10%. I will level set that there are other jurisdictions that operate in a range. So maybe their range is 9 to 11. And that does have different implications as to recommendations. But I would acknowledge, yes, there can be a yo-yo effect, particularly in certain lines of service with that fixed target. Since I've been here, we've only had 1 year we didn't have a recommendation for an increase because we came in at like 9.89 or 98% that year. And we just decided, okay, close enough on this line of service that we're not going to recommend an increase. But yes, it's very rare to hit that target right on the head.
I can add a little bit, Leslie. So the target is not set in statute or code. It's not a codified target. It is board practice, and staff have been directed in past rate reviews up to this rate review that 10% is the target. And so that's the target we're operating on. That doesn't mean that's what the board has to do. The board has the prerogative or the ability to change that target. And as Aaron said, we've had some discussions, particularly with the Hauler Association, about the fact that a hard target is always going to be going up or down because you're never going to hit 10%. And so whether there should be consideration of a range is something that we're open to considering and talking about. But at this point, we're operating on that 10% practice target. And we do, like Aaron said, we do have it on the website. We're open about it. We're not trying to be squirrely about it. So it is a transparent target, and that's what we're operating on right now.
Yeah, it didn't seem to me like something that is like hidden. I just don't think that that's going to be something like the average customer is going to be aware of. And I wonder, like, I'm always cognizant that there's just low trust in institutions right now. And I want people to feel like empowered that they can get this information. So,
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's also not a very easy concept to explain. So we have a lot of FAQs built, but if you have recommendations for how we can make that more useful and robust, we're always looking for an extra set of eyes on that information as well.
Yeah, happy to. I'll take my homework down on the beach and I'll think about this.
Oh, please wait till you get back from Hawaii before you think about it any further.
Okay, I can do that too. Thank you, everyone.
Yep, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I'll go again. This may be more to Tanya and Craig. Being, I manage my own budget at my job. And when you have pressures, it's all about cost savings. What can you describe as far as in your evaluation that you look at to see that these businesses are doing the fair due diligence to ensure that they are managing their expenses appropriately?
So when we look at the composite, we are looking at all of the haulers. So if a hauler does a really good job of controlling their costs and decreasing their expenses, then they will come out at a higher rate of return. So when we are looking at the rate of return, it is the composite of the whole system. And so we do have some haulers that are higher, and then we have some haulers that are lower. And so the haulers that are more conservative, they will get a higher rate of return. And we look at specific costs to make sure they're in line with predictions and things like that, along with like where they're at compared to other haulers as well, to make sure that there's nothing, like Aaron explained, that there's nothing that's out of whack, and then we go in and look at those things to make sure that it makes sense.
So Brian, you can try to, sorry, Craig, try another way to think about it. So there's Connie's talking about this composite, right? And $41 million is the composite revenue in the system. There's 8 players in there, 8 different companies playing. And the idea of having a 10% ROR is not that every 8 of those companies is going to make 10% profit on their expenses or revenue. It's that there's 10% of profit available in the system for the haulers to get in as income, as profit. So say there's 40 million, that means there should be 4 million in the system that is a potential profit source for all the collection companies. And then within that system, those 8 collection companies can be the ones that are more efficient will get a bigger piece of that $4 million. The ones that are less efficient will get a smaller piece of that $4 million. So that is the economic incentive kind of built into that concept of that system and how it's functioning in a sense. Does that help a little bit?
It does, but my query goes to this. If I naturally decide to increase my expenses, especially if I'm one of the big 3 haulers, then that's going to obviously impact and potentially trigger a request for a rate increase. And it feels like you get into the cyclical motion of more expenses, need more money, more expenses, need more money. How do we ensure that we are managing this appropriately is my question.
So one thing too, when we get these DCRs, an aspect of it is the costs, the indirect costs, the direct costs, the revenues. But another aspect of it is the program data. So they're required to report truck hours, labor hours, number of set outs, and all of this information, the number of carts that are in service. So a lot of our testing is comparing that program data to what is monetarily reported as a cost. And so a lot of our predictive analytics is kind of comparing the number of carts in place versus revenue, or wages versus truck hours. Number of FTE is one thing they present as well. So we try to get in a sense of what the market requires to pay a driver per hour. So that's one aspect of it. Disposal costs, we compare the tonnage that they report compared to their total tonnage, or total tipping fees, disposal fees, and whatnot. So we're always trying to find a way to bridge those 2 things together in order to compare them to what the overall composite is. So a lot of it is that there's some of the gray areas, subscriptions and dues, advertising, some of these kind of gray area costs. For some of the haulers will go in and ask for detailed information to try to see what they're placing there and try to determine if it's an allowable cost, if it's something that is actually applicable to the jurisdiction. And if not, then it's one of those things that we try to adjust and remove out of that deposit.
So in your assessment, you saw nothing alarming from any of the collection companies that would suggest that bad management leads to higher expenses potentially?
Yeah, no, I mean, nothing that we identified in our testing. That's not something we specifically look at. We're not looking to see how efficient they are in some of those aspects. You know, if they have a certain number of set outs that they do, we're making sure their FTE isn't 4 or 5 or, above the normal. So we're looking at it at efficiency level there, but not more or less how they're managing their people, how they're managing their routes, how their corporate overhead is one of those that's always difficult to do. Certain haulers have changes and fluctuations in how they present that from year to year, but we usually follow up with them and have a discussion as far as how that's being allocated or how they're reporting those costs. But that's the extent of it.
There's also another piece of it would be that the disposal cost is about 30% of the total cost, which there's no way for the hauler really to change that because it is what it is. It depends on where they're taking the material. And then I just did a quick calculation, and about 20% of it is just salaries and wages. So we've got about 50% of the costs in the system are just between disposal costs and wages. And so we look at, when we're looking at wages, we look at what the hourly rate is for a truck driver and things like that to make sure that it's reasonable based off of what we know in the area and things. So we do look at those pieces of it. And if there is something that we're concerned about, we would always go back to the hauler and get some clarification.
I would add, Brian, there is a kind of speaking to some of the prudency measurements that the marina is doing. If we find something that's an outlier that is likely a result of probably a data entry error, like, you know, we know that it costs $130 a ton to dump garbage, and we see a $250 a ton calculation on the in the DCR for garbage disposal, and there's no kind of explanation. It's just like, well, I don't know, you know, it was we will adjust it back to the benchmark that we know. And so we do those types of manual adjustments and then share that with the hauler and give them an opportunity to object to those adjustments or give us other data that supports their original data. So we do kind of go through that process. We attempt to, at least. But not, I saw you had your hand up, but
Yeah, I mean, you guys are this answers the questions. You guys do it. I don't have anything to do with franchise rates or well, a side effect of commodity values. But the it's basically, Brian, it's an audit. So they're auditing the haulers for, you know, expenses and allowable expenses. So it's not, it doesn't behoove the hauler to raise expenses because they can't, you know, just willy-nilly, because they can't increase the rates. So like Tom was saying, if you decide you're just going to spend more and more, and then, you know, it's that the 1,000 cuts. So like when Metro raised its fees last year, which they'll do again this summer, it had a pretty big impact on disposal of trash. When commodity values crashed, what we were able to pay or charge changed on the recycling commodity values. So there's not really a fix for that. That the recycling one was significant, and there was a small fee added, but that was with the approval of the county. So it doesn't. So I don't know if that it helps. Just from a different perspective, I mean, they run the process. They could tell you how they audit, but there's not. It's not. This is what we want, and then it's just done. And these guys are looking at all their pretty detailed information.
Oh, thank you. I
Well,
appreciate
I will
that.
say, Vinod, I've been told I can't call it an audit because CPAs.
Oh, it's not? Okay,
They have a
sorry.
special definition of what an audit is.
Okay, well, it's a reassure. What's
It's a review.
a review?
Tanya gave me a really
Okay.
good phrase once.
Sorry, I don't want to cause any legal issue. That just shows you how much I'm not in that realm. So, but just kind of a different perspective from it. That, you know, when National Solar, the big recycling crisis hit, and commodity values tanked and processing costs went up, we were forced to charge more. They didn't have a way to recover that immediately. They had to wait for the review to approve of it. So.
And just to clarify, that is the $2 fee or the 4% for commercial that you see reflected on our rate sheets. That's the result of the recycling.
I'll make one more comment and I'll be quiet because I feel like I'm talking too much. I apologize.
Keep them coming, Brian. It's good.
So, and let me start this with a question. I know we have 3 big haulers. Waste Management's one of them. There's 2 others, correct? What percentage of the overall market are those 3, in particular, like Waste Management? Do we know?
Give me just a second.
Okay. So the reason I'm making this, and I appreciate, Aaron, that you're pulling that up. I know not all of our collection companies are haulers. I'm trying to find the right naming convention to use.
You can use either interchangeably. In print, we will stick more with recycling and garbage and recycling collection company. In these more industry terms, typically haulers is how it will come out.
All right, I'll stick with haulers. Thank you. Easier to say. I know many of them are private companies, but Waste Management is a public company. So being a business guy, I looked at their 2022 year in numbers. They did pretty well, and they're very happy with like a 5 to 6% profit. And going back to the comment Leslie made, 10% seems really aggressive. Like my business would be, we would be dancing in the streets. We were making 10% every year. I understand the nature. I appreciate you breaking it down, right? It's a big pool. Not everybody gets that. And I want to make sure everyone gets a fair share. But it also feels like, as the common citizen, right? If I get this notice and Waste Management is my company, why am I giving more money to a company that did well? And I'm curious to anyone here, how would you address that common person question?
So can I answer your first question, which is the percentage? Now, I will say I didn't run it this year. This is off of last year's financials. I will go through what those percentages were. So waste management service area is about 54% of unincorporated Washington County. Pride disposal, 16%. Walker garbage, 15%. Garbarino, 7%. SWATCO, 4%. Republic, right around 1%. West Slope and Evergreen are now combined, but for financial purposes, last year they were separate. They were each less than 1%, and Hillsborough garbage disposal is less than 1% of the service. And when we look at this, the entire composites financials are accounted for. So it's not weighted. The assessment is not weighted that if one company has a higher return and the other has a lower return, it's still an average. It's not skewed or weighted in any way based on their share of the marketplace, if that makes sense.
But of course, if Waste Management is 50% of the market, their ROR will influence the system the most. Brian, to answer your question, how would I respond to that question from a customer or ratepayer? I think we have to separate ourselves at the local government level from corporate profits. As Waste Management as a Fortune 200 company, I know it's a massive global waste management company. The economics in Washington County are not necessarily a barometer of how Waste Management as a corporation is doing corporate wide. So we can't really use that as a decision-making point or data point in our decision-making. We have to rely on the local data that's here, that's presented to us. And I think we're seeing a rate increase because we're seeing costs increase by 12.5%, and we're seeing revenue increase by 5%. So revenue increasing is not keeping pace with expenses. And that dictates that in order to keep the system healthy and to ensure that the trucks and the drivers can continue to get paid and the companies can stay in business. I know that's hard to, when you're talking about waste management, that might be a hard thing, but some of the smaller companies, if the costs start outpacing the revenues, then they could be in trouble. But that's our role, that's our responsibility. And we look at the data that shows us that the costs went up and revenue didn't keep pace with it. And our job is to kind of reset that every year and take another look at it. So I think that's how I would answer that question. I know that might not be satisfying to everybody that say looks at the corporate profit sheets and sees that those large corporations are making profits, but that's out of the scope, I think, of Washington County's ability to manage financials for a company like that, or in regards to a company like that. I don't know, Aaron, if you would answer that differently or.
No, I'm along the same lines as you.
Yeah, it also becomes a concern, right, as we see the consolidation of certificates. I know at least before I joined, we had a lower garbage, and then Waste Management took that over. So it definitely does allow the larger company to slowly swallow some of the smaller companies that's there. So, but something we can probably address with future rulemaking if we so deem fit.
That'd probably be a code change, but doesn't mean it can't be, the board couldn't influence those kinds of changes. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, some jurisdiction, I think City of Portland has a cap on the total market share that an individual company can have. We don't have such a cap in Washington County. It's never been an issue. Like you said, Aaron, I know when I started here, we had something like 17 certificate holders. We're down to 8. So they are consolidating. Waste Management is not doing all of the buying. Pride is a local business that's acquired several certificates over the last couple of years. So they're also growing in the service area. But there is a consolidation over time that's happening.
Yeah. And Brian, keep asking questions. Don't feel like you asked too many. It's a good discussion. Any other questions on rate setting? Everybody feel comfortable with that?
Well, I've got a question on the food, but I think we were waiting on that part, right?
Yeah, let's go ahead and break into that. On the additional food collection, any questions on that? Or Sandra, if you could.
So the 3.60 I agree with for the trash increase, but the 1.934 increase for this food scrap implementation, I don't know if Marina can maybe explain where they got that figure. I don't think it was in the materials. I also think that decreasing the garbage and shifting this to the yard debris, I don't see how that can be an increase in cost. If anything, the tipping fees and other stuff for the decrease in the amount of garbage, the food scraps that would go into the garbage that now is diverted to the yard debris, I think would actually save money. Also, I believe, does this food scrap, it doesn't include multifamily or apartments, does it? I don't believe it does. And a lot of us homeowners, we do our own composting in our backyard. So I'm not sure we will have that much of an increase in our yard debris bins to justify this 1.93. I know it's only $6 or a little under $6 for a year, but I mean, I don't know, it's already going up $12 a year for a garbage, and this extra, I just don't like it. I don't see the justification for it. So anyone want to chip in on that?
Craig, do you want to talk a little bit about your cost assumptions in the model?
Yeah, so the way we kind of built it, originally we were looking at different options, you know, if you were changing frequency, if you're having separate carts and whatnot, but we kind of focused on the keeping the same frequency bi-weekly, and then mixing the cart. When we were looking at it, we went back and kind of looked at some of the program data that we had from prior years. And one thing that kind of stuck out was the set out rate is about 50%. So every 2 weeks, there's a pickup. So only half of the carts were being set out at that time. So it's not like trash, it's not like recycling where it's out there pretty much every week for pickup. So the frequency of the set outs was a lot lower than the other two services. So when we were looking at this model and looking at a participation rate, which is how much tonnage, what is the change or the participation rate of the set outs, we identified 10-15% as that. And so our idea was people were going to be more likely to set it out every week or every other week. So these number of pickups will be higher. So the frequency when the truck's going to have to stop on their route is going to increase, because they're not going to want that food scrap sitting in there for a month, you know, because it's get bi-weekly. So we looked at we also looked at the carts per labor hour, carts per truck hour, and it was a little bit lower as well. So in order to kind of bill to account for that increase in the truck hours, increase in the labor, we settled on that participation rate of 15%, increasing the cost by that. So that was the big driver in the cost, was looking at the 15% and saying, what are the food scrap, or what are the yard debris costs, and then an additional 15% for that. Some of the other costs in there are driven by other things. Depreciation for carts and containers is a separate thing. Processing fees will be Recology, as far as I know, and the processing fee is a little bit higher per ton. So now starting in October 1st, all yard debris, because it is mixed, will be going to Recology as opposed to where it had been before. So the rate is a higher rate, or tipping fee is a lot higher for that. Not a lot higher, but it's higher. So that is an additional cost. One thing we looked at too that is kind of indirectly impacted by this is if people were throwing food scraps in their solid waste, there's a reduction of disposal costs for their solid waste. Solid waste, it's about $135 a ton. So there would be some cost savings there. So trying to promote this as much as possible and get as much of that food scrap out of solid waste, that 20,000 tons will save the ratepayer in future periods because of that difference in disposal costs. Yeah, that's a lot, but any questions that came from that?
I think, oh, go ahead, Ashvin.
I was going to say, I think the thing that resonated with me was the fact that once you start adding food scraps to yard waste, right, it goes from type 1 to type 3. So even you start sprinkling in just a little bit of the food scraps in there, the cost of yard debris goes up. And until the food waste, enough tonnage is diverted to counter that from the reduced solid waste disposal, we won't break even. I don't know if you know, like at what point we would actually break even though, like how much percentage, like you assume a certain percentage is being diverted now. Like, is that based off of like, you know, because I know Hillsborough put in food scrap collection. Is that based off of how much like Hillsborough would do? Or when would we expect this to actually be like net a benefit to the, you know, to the payer that they're putting enough food scraps in their yard debris that outweighs the food scraps in their solid waste?
I'm not sure it ever would. Garbage is pretty much set out, you know, 100, it's an exaggeration, but it's always out. And if we take food out of the garbage, garbage is still going to always be out. So we're not going to reap the efficiency savings or the route savings from a less frequent set out that's associated with truck time and labor materials. The more the yard debris gets set out, the more cost it's going to be to run those routes to collect that yard debris. And the more food in it, the more those carts are probably going to be set out every cycle, and the more that cost is. Disposal is only 30% of our overall system. And so moving that material around within the disposal category will have a cost savings impact, but I don't think it'll outweigh the other 60% of the direct costs associated with labor and trucks and fuel and all those other items in there. I would say that if the ultimate goal of a solid waste collection system was to do it cheap, we would set one really large cart out and throw everything in that cart, and we would have the cheapest rates in the area. But once you start divvying it out and you start collecting it in different vessels, it's going to start costing more to run those different vehicles to collect those different materials. So again, we're not just doing it because it's cheap or we're trying to save money. We're doing it because we're trying to reap the environmental benefits and the outcomes of that. But I think that what you said, but Ashvin is right. The immediate direct impact is if you put one apple core in a yard debris cart, it becomes a type 3 material and has to go to a type 3 permitted facility. It can no longer go to a facility that just takes straight yard debris. And so that limits where it can go, maybe a longer drive distance to that one facility. And it also increases the cost of the 98% of the other material that's yard debris in there.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Tom. I would agree with you, Sandra. I also home compost. I was not excited about the increase in this cost. I was hoping it would be, you know, something beneficial for people, but it's, you know, if it's not including multifamily, it's not as beneficial to the public of non-backyard dwellers. Go ahead, Brian, with the question.
Yes, thank you. One quick question. This is not an opt-in, right? If it gets approved, everybody gets the charge, correct? Okay,
yep.
I see heads nodding. For me, I would say, on the surface, it just feels rough to be able to. Again, I always put on my hat of how do I explain this to my neighbors, right? And I would love to be able to explain it this way, that we are looking to expand the program maybe, because, you know, for me, I would want to put a pizza box in there. Clearly can't do that with this right now. Are we looking to get to that, you know, the paper plates, those type of things that are soiled? Yes, no, maybe. Under discussion? Yes, it's a Kathy question, maybe.
So it is a food program. So food is the main target material. Pizza boxes, we would not be advertising as included in it. I believe they are included in Portland's program still. The main reason we wouldn't be running for pizza boxes is that we expect pizza boxes actually to become a recyclable material in the blue bin with the Recycling Modernization Act, and we don't want to start telling people to throw them in the yard debris cart and then in a year tell them to throw them in the blue bin. There is an acceptable tolerance for like napkins and paper products that come with, you know, coffee filters and tea bags and things like that. But when we start introducing compostable materials or plates, it just brings a torrent of material that is ruining the compost at the compost facilities, and they're microplastics all up in the compost. So people just don't know how to, there's just no stop there. It's
Right.
food only we've seen, or it's a bunch of stuff that comes with it that shouldn't be in there.
So yeah, that's my headwind here is that, and Craig, man, I appreciate that this is probably a lot more art than it is science. But 20% just doesn't feel like it connects. I mean, I'm kind of in the same camp as the others here tonight, as far as I don't throw that much food waste in my garbage. I just don't. And I'm not sure my neighbors do either. Now, that's just me living in my neighborhood, right?
Brian, can you, the 20%, are you saying that you don't think there's 20% of food in our garbage, or what?
Correct. Because I put it down the disposal or I compost it.
Okay.
That's what I do.
We have, so we have data from waste composition studies from the state of Oregon that shows that 24% of our garbage is food.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Is that
Okay.
multifamily too? Or is that?
That's residential, that's single family.
And then my last comment, because I see there's people lining up and I want to get out of the way, is this. I see the trucks, so I'm trying to understand why the cost goes up, whether or not my bin is out or not. The truck is coming by. You're paying the labor, you're paying the gas. Someone help me understand that disconnect.
When it stops in front of your house, it takes an extra couple seconds for the
Sure.
driver to stop the truck, to move the arm, to tip the cart, to set the cart down, and then. put
And
the
there's
arm
a
back
large
in, and
cost
then
to that?
drive. It's an incremental cost. It's called time and motion is what
Okay.
So if you're hit 100 houses and all 100 houses have their carts out, it's gonna
I
take
see.
you
You can't hit the same
significantly
number of
longer
houses
than
at
if
the
you
same
drive
time.
down the 100 houses,
Yeah.
only 50 of them have their carts out.
Okay, I got
Because
it.
you're just driving past half of them.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Well, and to be fair, there also can be additional costs associated with those trucks filling faster and having to make more trips to the processing facilities.
Yeah, and then they're coming back to the neighborhood again, and also potentially even more trucks on the road to do that as well.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Yeah, so it's like half question, half comment. I guess I'm like super excited about food scraps because we actually home compost too, but because I get excited about projects and then my excitement wanes quickly. My husband only would agree to do like a smaller compost and we just fill it up super fast. And so then I'm like, I can't throw away more food. And so then I'm kind of stuck. So I initially really excited. I wish there was a world that it was like a benefit, like Ashwin was saying, where it kind of just came within our new like increase rate, but we didn't have to increase rate specifically for the collection. So that's kind of my comment there. My question is sort of like, how does the county view like the main goal of this program, which will help me understand, like, is the goal of this to reduce our environmental impact? Because then I'm like, hell yeah, I will pay an extra $1, $12, whatever it is. I will absolutely pay that to reduce my environmental impact and help offset others. Or is it the ease? Like, what is the main thing that we're sort of like going for as a county? Because then I think that might help like me understand how to explain it to my neighbors, because I love my neighbor across the street, but he will complain to me about anything, right? So if there's something he doesn't agree with, he will let me know. And so like, I always think, what would my neighbor across the street want to know, how to understand like why this matters?
So I'll say, Leslie, the main goal that we have for programs like this is for environmental benefit. So the landfills are like the number 3 methane emitters in our country for greenhouse gases. Methane is a greenhouse gas, is 28 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Methane is emitted from landfills from the decomposition of organic materials, and food waste is the most volatile organic material that enters a landfill. lots of landfills have gas capture systems. They do flaring of methane. They capture methane for plasma gasification. But most of the food, like if we're just talking about peels from an orange or half-eaten scrambled eggs, that stuff is already in a pretty significant state of decomposition by the time it is dumped into the face of the landfill. And by the time it's capped with daily cover and there's a gas capture system in, most of that methane has already been released from the materials. So the intrinsic motivation is for the environmental benefit associated with removing food from the landfill.
Awesome, thank you. I feel like we should lead with that because I think that will get a lot of people versus like just for $12 a year, we can stop killing our planet a little bit. Just a little, slow it actually probably is what it is, not stop it.
But
But, you know.
it is also one of the top things we hear from community members about that they want
Yeah.
unincorporated Washington County to have a organics collection program for residential customers. And the cities around us all have it: Beaverton, Hillsborough, Cornelius, Forest Grove, Tigard. Tualatin starts in July, Sherwood, and we're the last jurisdiction in Washington County that does not have a residential food scraps program.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about it. Wish it was free, but you know what? The way she goes. So thank you for answering.
Am I misremembering, or isn't Metro also requiring this to some degree, or is that continuing to push out?
Metro requires us to have a commercial food scraps collection program, but not a residential program at this point in time. They may in the future, but they do not right now.
Okay. Thanks. Christy, you go ahead.
This goes to the conversation that just went on. What's the plan for education and outreach? Because that seems so critical. Does some of that fall on the haulers themselves? Is that just strictly the county? How do you inform people about the things you just talked about, Tom?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm sad that our education and outreach supervisor doesn't work with us anymore, but the team is got this on their work plan. There is a education and outreach strategy being put together, including mailers, notifications. We will be working with the garbage haulers to make their customers aware that it's an opportunity program as well. We have social media. We do electronic and print newsletters. The print newsletter for this calendar year is going out actually in the next couple of weeks, so it'll miss this opportunity, but the next one, the next year will as well. So it's a combined effort. It is, it's hard to reach everybody. It's really expensive to send a letter to every household. If we sent a letter to every household in unincorporated Washington County, it would cost us about $20,000. And so the ROI on that is something we need to really think carefully about and whether we can afford it in our education budget. We do take the opportunities with every year the haulers are required to distribute collection calendars and recycling guides. Those would be updated to include program information and announcements about this that would go out in the beginning or the fall, late fall in 2023. So there is a plan. I can't tell you the whole plan. I could help get you that information if you're interested in it, Christy, and see what the education team is planning. But part of the reason for doing it in October is to give the team time from when we get approval or board approval, gives them 2 months to implement an education and implementation plan in a sense of how they would get that information out there.
Thank you. And just one other thing, I hope I'm not misunderstanding. So about half of the people right now are using yard debris containers, right?
Well, everybody has them in urban unincorporated, but they're set out on average half the time.
Okay.
So if you have it and you say in the winter, especially in yard debris, is very seasonal. In the dead of the winter, you might not have much to put in your bin. And so it sits inside of your house for a couple months, and then spring comes and everyone mows their lawns and the bins are out there every single cycle. That's the kind of set out rate measurement. So the estimation is when food goes in, especially in the off seasons, that food is not going to be seasonal like the yard waste. I think there's going to be more set outs in the winter and in the middle of the summer when the growing season and before leaf disposal season starts.
So there will be times when the only thing in the bin is food debris or food waste.
Potentially, for sure.
Yeah.
I know at my house in Tigard, they started in January of this year. And January and February and beginning of March, it was only food in my bin.
Okay, thanks.
Please go ahead, Brian.
So I'm reading through the thing here. I'm trying to figure, so is there restrictions on the food you can put in there? I'm not.
If it grows,
seeing-
it goes.
Grows, it goes.
So
Okay.
you can put bones, eggshells, cheese, meat, dairy, not liquids.
Not fats.
Like liquid fats, no. I mean, if it was like if you had a steak and it had fat in it, like you had a really good ribeye and you trimmed it up, you could throw that in there. But large amounts of fat, like if you were a butcher shop, you wouldn't want to put it in there. But household generated.
Okay. Because I'm thinking if we keep it simple, people get on board, right? So, you know, you scared me, Ashwin, when you said, well, not fats. I'm like, oh no, don't make it not this and that type of thing. We're never going to get people to adopt it. So it is going to be fairly simple, right? Okay, cool.
Any last questions from folks on this topic?
A procedural question. Do we have to vote on both pieces together, the rate and the food, or is it two separate votes?
That was going to be my question also. It looks like it's one vote for the entire package. Can you clarify, Aaron? Right, I believe it's the staff recommendation that we vote on.
So staff's recommendation is one package. Sorry, Aaron. I don't, the committee could make a recommendation different than staff's recommendation though.
With
staff
regards to rate, well, just with regards to rates, the administrative rules would be a separate action item.
Correct. Yes, we have two action items tonight. So this is the first action item. And in that, I guess the question is, can we vote on a rate increase, not including the food scraps as well as the food scraps separately?
I think your committee could do that. I would, my caution is that there's costs associated with that service. And so I'm not sure staff would carry that recommendation. Staff would share that recommendation with the board. I think staff is committed, if we want a food scraps program, that we need to pay for it and not expect the haulers to absorb the cost for it. So staff might go to the board with a different recommendation than GRAC, which is not unacceptable. We can totally do that. I would just make sure that you kind of think about what that's saying or the signal that's sending in that recommendation.
Yeah. So
I'm okay voting as one, to be honest.
Yeah, I think if people are, against it or want to put that on the record, I think that's okay afterwards, to clarify that. I would need a motion from somebody to vote on this. It's been a while since we've done an action item.
I would make a motion that we agree with staff's recommendations. And I also read the letter from Washington County Hauler Association. So I would move that we accept staff's recommendations.
I think somebody needs to second that. So I would second that if that needs to happen.
Thanks for that second. Yep. We go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Yes, so I believe I need to read the full recommendation and then do the vote. Is that correct, Kathy?
You could have read it before, but if the nod's motion refers to staff's recommendation in the staff report, then I think that's fine.
Okay, great. Then we will just proceed. Let me pull up my spreadsheet for tracking here. We'll just start at the top. So, are the options yay or nay?
Yes.
Okay, we'll start with you, Ashvin.
Yeah, I will vote yay.
Sandra?
Do we get to make comments at this time as well, or just a yay or nay?
You can make comments.
I vote yay with hesitation, but in order to get the food scrap thing through, which I've been wanting for years and years and years, and hopefully if we review this next year, if there is a large profit, we could always adjust it too. So we'll see. So I vote yay.
We move on to Leslie.
Oh, yay.
Hannah's absent. Christy?
Yay.
Myra,
Bueno, ese es un sí, lo que dice.
Pete's absent. Vinod,
I vote yay. It's still the cheapest service I have. I can't go to Burgerville for cheaper than have somebody come to my house 8 times a month.
and Brian.
So I will vote yay. I think that, like Sandra, I have some concerns that I think we've heard here tonight from many of us that warrants a deeper discussion and maybe a level of understanding and potential, recommendations for changes if possible. But I vote yay.
Okay, that concludes the voting on that item.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Aaron, for all the work, and the consultants as well, and everybody who worked on this. I know it's a lot of work, so.
Agreed.
Appreciate
Excellent
it.
work. Thank you all. Yes.
Ashwin, we have a question in the Q&A. That is an interesting question. It's a very deep question. I don't know if we want to give Vicky the opportunity to ask her question and we can try to answer it. It's up to you.
Sure, that sounds good. I did not notice that in the Q&A system. Yeah, we can go ahead and do public comments now.
Okay,
Is she still on? Yep, she is.
yes, just a moment.
My question is, stepping back a little bit broader, there's a certain amount of waste in our area generated annually. I'm sure it's a huge amount. Is it good for the overall garbage and recycling system or bad if people throw away less?
It's a very good question, Vicky. And this is the same question that I think Leslie asked. And that is, depends what you could define good and bad as. If the definition of good is environmental benefit, less pollution and less emissions, less greenhouse gases for our planet, then certainly less waste is good. Our goals from DEQ, our goals from Metro, our goals at Washington County are to reduce waste. But there is these goals and the efforts associated with them are funded by waste. So it's a challenging dynamic because if there's less waste, there's less money to do the work to reduce waste. So there's a saying in the solid waste industry that if you succeeded at your job, you put yourself out of business. I don't think we're ever going to get there because we're always going to be creating waste as humans. But I think the answer there is that we need to create financial signals, or we need to fund our system so that it does not encourage more waste generation. So this is an perfect example of the conversation we just had. We should not be scared to pay more to do the right thing because we're going to lose money on the garbage side. Recycling is not free. Go ahead.
More all the time. I was coming at this from the perspective of how can we incentivize or reward people that throw away less? People like me and the other master recyclers that are here, not because it's unfair to any of us who throw out once every 3 months, but because how it affects the system. So I know because of the previous conversation, it's way more complex than the average person, like most of us, would think. So it's not just the environmental, that's my number one too. But I know the system has to be able to be sustainable, and that means a certain amount of profit. But then is anybody looking at how much less waste can redefine the system so that we're meeting both goals, that haulers are making money and people are paying less and there's less? It seems like if the goal is less waste, we should be incentivizing and rewarding that. If possible, in the capitalist America.
Yeah, and technically we do have what we call a pay-as-you-throw system here. So a 20-gallon can picked up once a week costs significantly less, maybe half as much as a 90-gallon can picked up once a week. So there is some economic signals. I'm not sure how much behavior change is driven by the cost of garbage service, because it's not a significant cost for most households, but there is economic signaling there. And I think there is something, we do have an on-call service option for garbage as well, that if you were getting pickups once every 3 months, that would be substantially cheaper than 20 gallons a week. There are also ways to look at monthly service options, which we don't currently have on the books in Washington County, but I think there's ways to do it. And I hear what you're saying, that we need to provide maybe better incentives for people that generate less waste. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that, if you can incentivize people to do that, you will get less waste, and that's one of the goals.
Yeah.
Of course, if they know it's an option, as well as
Yeah.
being an option.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Thanks
Thank
for the
you.
question. We always enjoy the public engagement. We would go ahead and move to the next action item of the solid waste and administrative rules.
I got 12 minutes. Okay. But I'm still going to speak slowly. So my name's Kathy Folsom. I'm with the Solid Waste and Recycling staff. I'm here tonight to present proposed rule amendments to the Washington County Solid Waste and Recycling Administrative Rules. These rules establish standards for implementation of the code that include definitions, reporting, education, promotion, and residential and commercial collection service standards. Amendments to the admin rules in 2022 established an additional recycling collection service known as Recycle Plus for all urban unincorporated residential customers. On July 1 of 2023, Recycle Plus will expand to become available to urban multifamily households. Additionally, as we've been talking tonight, it's proposed that a new residential food waste collection program would begin on October 1st. Developing a new collection program and expanding a current collection program requires adjustments to the service standards in the rules and the adoption of rates for the collection service. The proposed rules primarily authorize the start of the urban residential food waste collection program on October 1st, add notice requirements regarding the availability of the residential reduced rate program, expand the availability of Recycle Plus collection service to urban multifamily households effective July 1, and require that collection service providers offer electronic on-call pickup requests for the Recycle Plus collection service. In terms of the review process, on March 17th of this year, the proposed rules revisions were sent to the Washington County Haulers Association for review and comment. And on April 6th, the Washington County Hauler Association submitted written comments regarding the proposed rules. As a result of those comments and additional discussion, many of the issues that were raised have been resolved and are reflected in the draft rules before you. Next steps regarding the proposed rules are that they are scheduled for a board work session on June 13th, 2023, along with the collection rate changes. Staff will be making a presentation to the board so that they would have an opportunity to ask questions and see what we think should be adopted. So in closing, my recommendation is that the Washington County Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee favorably recommend to the Washington County Board of County Commissioners that the proposed administrative rules be adopted. I'm available for questions. If you need to see a specific rule, I can always share the rules document. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Kathy. Please jump into questions, Christy.
Yeah, on this Recycle Plus, the customer notify the hauler electronically or by phone 2 days prior. So it's still leaving it with the customer every time to contact, or is there any hope for the hauler to send opt-in, opt-out messages, and you just say yes, no. It's so much easier that way. Because you forget that date.
Yeah, so there's an on-call program, so it does require the customer to opt in, but I hear what you're saying, that the notice could come from somewhere to say, hey, do you want to opt in or out? So the way we're trying to do that now is we have the Garbage and Recycling Day app, which is a collection schedule reminder tool. And if you are a Recycle Plus customer, the Garbage and Recycling Day app will send you a notice 2 days or 3 days in advance that says, hey, Recycle Plus is coming up. Do you want to opt in? And it says, if so, click here, and then you click there and it takes you to an opt-in form on the website of the hauler. So that's how we've approached it. It's similar to what you're asking about. It's a little bit of a workaround.
So you just install the app and then you're, okay, so that's another education piece then.
And we're seeing about 35% of Recycle Plus customers in the app. We're trying to get them in the app, but yes, that's an education piece.
And I would just mention that the reason for this rule change is that not all the haulers were providing electronic notification. You had to actually call on a phone. So we heard from customers that that is not nearly as convenient.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, am I up? Okay. Kathy, you know this is my favorite topic. All right. So I got one question and 3 possible amendments. And I apologize, I wish I got it to you sooner before the meeting. Question is, what is the definition of electronically? Hang on, I copied it in here. Hang on, I know I had it in my language. Require customer to haul electronically. What is that defined as? If I was a hauler, how would you think that should be interpreted?
Something other than using your phone
Okay.
or
So
being
does
there.
email
or
count as
being there in-
electronically?
The way it works now,
Mhm,
there's a form or a request,
mhm.
So I don't know if email, but the way I look at it is it's anything other than a phone or in person. So requirement.
Could we make it so that it electronically is defined as some type of mobile app? And the reason I say it, and I know you don't want me to say this and no one likes to hear it, but Ridwell did set a bar last year, guys. And it was real easy to use. And we saw the comment from the one citizen, and I personally have experienced that. Last week, I did the app or did the form, didn't pick up my Recycle Plus. That's the 3rd time it's happened since December 2022. And I've worked with you guys and I love Megan. I'm so sad she moved on. Well, I'm happy for her. But my point being is this, is I think we have to put a little bit more, got to make it an app. And there has to be positive notification that you got my request. Right now, there's nothing. And we got to make that a requirement. And
I think, oh, sorry, I thought you were done. I'm
Oh,
sorry,
no,
but
no,
continue.
no,
No, I was
it-
just. Continue, I'm
All right,
sorry.
I'll finish real quick. And the last one was a penalty for failure to pick up. Like I can call, or they will have to come get it if they told me they were going to get it and it didn't get picked up. Because this is what happened. I was out of town. My beautiful spouse, she brought it in, and it weighs almost nothing. And then I go to empty it or put more stuff in there, and it's full. And I'm like, eh. So those 3 things: electronically being as an app, positive notification, and some way that I can force them to come out and pick it up. That's my 3 cents.
So in terms of that, of requiring a mobile app, the rules are really reflecting the practice that we have now. So we couldn't, I don't think it would be tonight, we could have that in a rule because it doesn't exist for all the haulers. So it's not that we couldn't, it's kind of like what I was mentioning to you before. It doesn't mean that that's not an admirable goal to strive toward and start having that conversation of what that would look like. But the rules we can't mandate something easily that can't be a conflict, like you're already going to be not in compliance with the rules. And so that was one. Your other one was.
Kathy, I would also say real quick on the app, I don't think I want 8 haulers with 8 apps.
Yeah.
What about through our app? Make it because that could increase
So
adoption.
that already happens.
It don't work for me.
So the customer signs up for the app, it sends you a notification, it says, pick up your request here. And then
Yeah,
you
but to
submit the
schedule
request.
the request, I can't do it through the app.
So you can click the link on the app, it'll take you somewhere to reschedule a request.
Yeah, that's the broken part. It don't work that way.
I don't think it's functionally possible for us to have our app dispatch a service from a different company. So
Okay.
maybe there's a way to do it, but it's something
Okay.
we could look into. But I hear what you're saying.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it. What about the
Yeah.
positive feedback that they got my request?
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah, that's something, I don't know that that's in rule, but we have a lot of practice around service offerings for now. Maybe that's again, something that we could work with the haulers to see if that's easy, how that might happen.
Right.
And I think that's would help people a lot. I get where you're coming from, because we hear from people like, I don't know, it just kind of, although I think some haulers, I saw a message, do get a message back saying your request has been.
Well,
the
the
one
WM, unfortunately. So
The one the woman sent to us to the committee had a acknowledgement.
It had an affirmation. Now,
oh, that doesn't guarantee it. I've gotten that. It's a screenshot. It just says, yep, you clicked the form. It don't mean they got it, because I've had to follow up before and call them, not to drag it on, but it isn't positive notification in my opinion.
I think those kinds of things might be, at least for now, as more suited to, unfortunately, to the complaint system and dealing with the,
Okay.
one-offs, because it's like Tom said, I mean, we look at that as that is an affirmation. Now, I get it that it's it's not really making, effectively acknowledging the request for the pickup, but from what we see, it looks like it is. So
Anything about missed pickups that we can put in there?
That's already there.
Did I miss
If
it?
they miss your pickup and you notify them within 2 business days, they have to come get it at no extra charge.
But if they say you didn't schedule it, they could fight me on it though. That's the
If you
downside. That's
have,
why I
I
was trying
would
to
say,
figure
if you have a screenshot of a positive affirmation that you even
Mhm.
clicked that form, that's your evidence.
Okay, love it. So last thing I'm gonna say is this, and I'll yield my time here. I love we're gonna expand it, but I just feel like it's still in a rough state, like we're still piloting this, and I'm worried that as we expand it, we're gonna get more grumpy people with a first impression versus delighted people. And that worries me that, and I saw your presentation, Tom, thought it was great. And, but it does look like it's a flat curve, right? So we're trying to increase adoption, but if you don't get that great first experience, people are going to just say, yeah. And I hope we can get some better, and it just feels like the haulers, or at least waste management, just don't care. They really don't. I got on the phone at times. I mean, I've been working with Megan since December and things really haven't changed. And I hope the other haulers are good, but man, we got to figure out a way to put a stick to waste management on this so they change a little bit. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Brandon. It is the county's responsibility to ensure that our franchisees are following the rules and regulations. And we have been working with Waste Management. We've given them ample opportunity to correct some of their failures. And we are prepared to take action against Waste Management if they continue to violate the rules and not deliver the program as it's intended or as it's required to in the rules. We need customers to help us document that. We can't take enforcement action over stories and screenshots. We need to know when a request was made and when a request was missed. And we need to be able to investigate that. And if we can document those instances, we will do that because that's our responsibility.
Real quick, I saw you, but sorry. Can we solicit that? Can we set up a dedicated email and say, hey, you got a terrible story, tell us so we can make changes.
I don't know if we want to do that, but we do receive lots of feedback, and we encourage customers to provide us feedback. When we get complaints about missed Recycle Plus pickups, we encourage customers to use certain tools and functions and to tell us if it doesn't work, so that we can have that
Okay.
dialogue and that communication and work towards continuous improvement. We're not just trying to buck everybody off. We are working with Waste Management, and we are working with the customers that are having issues with it. And we want to document it, and we need them to do it right, because that's the responsibility as a franchisee.
Love hearing that. Thank you.
I just wanted a real quick clarification on Brian's question. Well, your example was they don't pick it up because you didn't put it out. You
Nope.
want them to come back and get it?
Yeah, because the bin's full.
But if-
So
but if you don't put it out, how are they supposed to pick it up?
no, it was out. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I missed
It's
that.
got the sealed
Clarification on it.
lid. So what my spouse did was, because I was out of town, she just picked it up and put it in the garage. She didn't look inside to double check that it actually got picked up.
Okay, so it wasn't mispicked up. It wasn't you that you guys flipped. Okay, thank you. I just wanted. I was gonna say that's asking a lot if you don't put your card out, they don't pick it up. So thank you.
Yeah. Tom and Kathy, is it worthwhile for us to have like a future agenda topic on that? Just because I know we've had public people show up here with similar complaints we've received. I think it'd be something worth digging into.
Sure,
Spend
and
some open at a time.
I would recommend the Waste Management comes and talks about how they're fixing their Recycle Plus program, so we don't have to speak on their behalf.
We could have another sort of update in a couple months, maybe, or like maybe the first fall meeting, and have Waste Management come, see if things have changed. We can talk about changes we've made. Is that what you're looking for? Because
Yeah,
I'll get
I
it.
think-
I'll get it on the
yeah.
calendar.
That sounds good to me. I think, John or Brian brings up some good questions, and I don't have any familiarity with it just because I'm not a user of it. So it's an important, and it does come up, right? So
I will say that we have seen a significant improvement in complaints, exactly what you're describing, Ryan. So I know there's improvement going on, but that doesn't mean it's that the current level of performance is acceptable if you're still getting missed pickups. So we have seen improvement, but it needs to keep improving. So.
any other questions on the rules? Sandra?
I didn't have a question, but I wanted to make a comment. Doesn't Washington County's website have a place where you can complain, not just Recycle Plus, but of any hauler issue? And maybe we could promote that a little bit more, so people know that there is a place that they can post things to. I know I've had a couple, I didn't even know about it till last year. But,
Yeah, we have a report a problem webpage that goes to our code enforcement team that includes problems with service providers, garbage recycling service providers, noise, and nuisance issues.
And we get a certain number of comments and problems through the recycle inbox that Tom mentioned earlier as well.
I did not know this exists. Thank you for calling it out, Sandra. Love it. Yeah, we definitely have to promote this.
Any other questions on this? Clarifications? If not, we also need a vote on this, so I need a motion to take Kathy's recommendation. I'm trying to find the staff report. We need a motion from someone. on the committee to-
I'll motion. I motion to adopt the recommendations.
I'll second it. Go ahead.
Double seconding, perfect, thanks.
Great. Let's start at the top with you, Ashwin. Yes or no?
Yes, for me.
Sandra?
yes.
Leslie?
Yes.
Christy?
Yes.
Myra?
Yes. See?
Vinod?
Yay.
And Brian?
Yes.
That completes the roll call.
Great. Thank you, Kathy, for that. We appreciate the details on this. So I guess last item is public comment. One last opportunity. If anyone from the public, the attendee pool would like to ask a question or make a comment, we can check on that. In the meantime, just thank everybody for the robust discussion tonight. Rate review is very important, so really appreciate, the questions, the clarification. I think it was really good, especially compared to previous sessions. So please keep it up. Appreciate the dedication from everybody on staff. and
Sandra has
public.
her hand up, Ashvin.
Oh yeah, Sandra, go ahead.
I want to say Sunset High School is having a recycle drive this Saturday. They're going to be collecting all sorts of things like styrofoam, number 6 plastics, batteries, contact lens cases, hygiene packaging, writing instruments, and Brita items. Just wanted to throw that out there. So Brian, you can take some of that stuff that Recycle Plus didn't take and haul it down there.
I think our outreach team will be there too.
Go Apollos.
Cool. Yeah, Menard's old alumni.
Ricardo is telling me that our team will be there also helping collect tablets, phones, and laptops for Free Geek. So
Cool.
Great. Looks like we have no further public comments.
It's from 10 to 1, by the way. Sunset High School.
Cool. Well, we can adjourn the meeting then. Thanks, everybody.
thank
Good
you.
evening.
Thanks, Ashvin, for chairing.
See you in 3
Thanks,
weeks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for attending the May 18th,
Thank you.
2023 Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee meeting. As stated at the beginning, this
Gracias.
meeting was recorded and will be published to our website within 1 week. Thank you all for attending.
Hasta luego. Gracias a los dos. Bye.
Myra? Oh, yeah, I missed her. Okay.